Return of the Mount Hua Sect, Chapter 142. You and me, let's work together. Hong Dae-kwang's eyes stayed focused on the teacup in front of him. Cheap green tea was poured into a dirty glass. However, the other party drank it rather well, as if nothing was wrong. He doesn't seem to be picky with things. In his position, Hong Dae-kwang met many people from various sects, quite a few of whom would frown upon seeing this shabby teacup. It's strange to see them come to a branch of the Beggars' Union and still expect proper treatment. In that respect, the person in front of him was amazing. He understood how to read the atmosphere well. But the problem is... So, Hong Dae-kwang looked at Chungmyeong with a slightly bewildered expression and spoke. You're a third-class disciple from that Mount Hua. It's Chungmyeong. So, you must be Mount Hua's divine dragon, right? It's not a title that I like, but that's what everyone calls me. Chungmyeong let out a sigh. Divine dragon? What divine dragon? Who came up with such an embarrassing name? There are many classy and elegant names to choose from, but they had given him such a weird and childish name instead. Hong Dae-kwang, who glanced at Chungmyeong, nodded. His eyes were slowly drawn to the report in his hands. It's like poking a sleeping tiger. It's not exactly the same, but it felt unavoidable. The plum blossom pattern engraved on Chungmyeong's chest showed that he was truly a disciple from Mount Hua. So, Hong Dae-kwang nodded and continued. I understand that you are Mount Hua's third-class disciple, the divine dragon, Chungmyeong. So why have you come to our branch? I'm here to sell something. Hong Dae-kwang frowned. Does this brat know where the hell he is? Chungmyeong was the first person to come to the Loyang Beggars Union branch offering to sell something. Then you're here to make a sale. Was tossing my men around a part of that sale? It couldn't be helped. I came to see the branch leader, but they wouldn't let me in. Hong Dae-kwang took a deep breath. This wasn't something Chungmyeong could be blamed for. Mount Hua's divine dragon had a good reputation, but he was a person that one would normally never be able to meet. The guards tried to send him away just because the opponent was young. I do apologize for what happened. It's fine. What could a beggar know? Hong Dae-kwang narrowed his eyes and looked at Chungmyeong. He's certainly not ordinary. Not that it was surprising. It would be more difficult to find an ordinary person among those who have made a name for themselves. Of all the powerful people, those who stand out are often unusual in their own ways. In addition, the geniuses of this era each had their own quirks. If it was Mount Hua's divine dragon who had the greatest reputation among them, then it was understandable that he had some sort of personality disorder. So, you said you came here to sell something. Yes. Taoist. You don't seem to understand since you don't have much experience. But this isn't that sort of place. If you have something to sell, go to Nanjeon. Ah, is that so? Chungmyeong nodded and rose from his seat. It was such a relaxed reaction that Hong Dae-kwang felt embarrassed and began to panic. Should I ask him to stay? First of all, he wanted to hear what Chungmyeong had brought to sell. Before Hong Dae-kwang could finish, Chungmyeong asked, Where is the local branch of the lower district sect? Hong Dae-kwang's eyes widened. Why are you looking for them? Because I have something to sell. Hong Dae-kwang's eyes trembled. Reaching out to the lower district sect as soon as he was rejected by Beggars Union meant that Chungmyeong did not come here naively. What is it that you want to sell? Do I need to tell that to someone who isn't going to buy it? Wait, Taoist. I feel like I may have made a mistake. Hong Dae-kwang quickly grabbed Chungmyeong and spoke. You've already come all the way here. Just because some of the beggars blocked you doesn't mean you should leave so hastily. Tell me, the branch leader, what you have. Do you understand how great of a leader I am? Well, it didn't matter. Would you like to sit down again? Well, I don't really want to. Come on, don't act like this. Chungmyeong pretended to be reluctant as he retook his seat. Meanwhile, Hong Dae-kwang shouted out, "Bring us some tea, the good stuff." "Don't worry about the tea, just bring me grain tea." Hong Dae-kwang tilted his head. Grain tea was a euphemism for alcohol. It was tea made from the grains left over from the production of alcohol. For the Taoist? Yes, grain tea. Right. Yes, bring some alcohol here. Hong Dae-kwang gave the instructions and turned his head to Chungmyeong. I don't think he's an idiot. Hong Dae-kwang got the feeling that Chungmyeong must have brought something really good if he had been here like this. Right. So what are you trying to sell? This. Chungmyeong took the map out from his sleeve and placed it down without delay. A message. Hong Dae-kwang frowned. With just a glance, he could tell that it was far from ordinary. It seemed like a map, but was strangely encrypted. Although, as the branch leader, he had dealt with similar items in the past. What Chungmyeong brought this time was more difficult than anything he had seen before. How complicated is this? The lines were chaotic, but they weren't drawn randomly. It was an elaborately woven message. Hong Dae-kwang couldn't begin to fathom what sort of great man did this. This. As Hong Dae-kwang unconsciously reached for the map, Chungmyeong slapped his hand away. Hey, you can't touch it. Look with your eyes, not your hands. Hong Dae-kwang looked at Chungmyeong with blank eyes. Oh my, I thought my heart would jump out of my throat. Hong Dae-kwang was unable to perceive any of Chungmyeong's movements until his hand had already been struck. If Chungmyeong had held the sword, his wrist could have been severed before he even noticed. This is the strength of Mount Hua's divine dragon. He didn't doubt the man's ability. While dealing with information, he learned to distinguish between plain rumors and the truth. Looking at the Jongnam sect's tight-lipped response to the story of Mount Hua's divine dragon, Hong Dae-kwang could tell there was truth in the legend. He simply thought it may be a bit exaggerated. However, even if every bit of the rumor was true, it was shocking that Hong Dae-kwang was completely unable to react to Chungmyeong's movements. We need to drastically revise our evaluation of Mount Hua's divine dragon. Hong Dae-kwang gulped and looked at the map. For now, this was the most important matter. What is this? So how should I begin the explanation? Chungmyeong shrugged. Hong Dae-kwang, who patiently listened to the story, alternated between looking at the encoded map and Chungmyeong. Wait a moment. Hong Dae-kwang, who had been silent for a while, tried to speak, but Chungmyeong raised his hand and stopped him. Things like, how can I believe this? And what an absurd story. You should refrain from saying such things. I've already heard enough, and isn't it your job to investigate and judge whether it's real or not? That's true. Chungmyeong smiled and spoke. Enough. How much are you going to buy this for? How much? Hong Dae-kwang felt his face heat up. If everything Chungmyeong said was true, that he had taken down Mujin and pilfered this map from him, then this map belonged to the untraceable seizing sword, and it contained knowledge of Yaksun's tomb. There's no way to estimate. This information was priceless. To be precise, its value could be calculated, but it went far beyond Hong Dae-kwang's range. Hong Dae-kwang's eyes swam around erratically. Suddenly, he looked at Chungmyeong. You're selling this? Yes. Why? Is that what you ask someone who's selling something? No, I mean. Hong Dae-kwang's common sense left him unable to comprehend this at all. Why would he sell this? This was a map leading to Yaksun's tomb. In other words, there was a high chance that there would be treasured swords stolen from various sects, soul vitality pills, and maybe even his pill-making recipes. If news of this spread, it would raise up a storm of blood. No matter who got their hands on this, it would change the fate of any individual or sect, and perhaps it could even shift the fate of the entirety of the martial world. Yet Chungmyeong was selling it. Why? Hong Dae-kwang looked at Chungmyeong, unable to understand. Wouldn't you rather try and decipher this? You're not going to buy it? No, it isn't like that. This. Chungmyeong smiled bitterly. If I could solve it, I would have done so. What's the point in holding on to something that can't be solved? I'd rather earn some money from it. Hong Dae-kwang nodded his head. Surely, he made a good point. Many people spend their lives obsessing over treasures without ever benefiting from them. This was a tempting fortune that many would abandon everything to acquire. Perhaps Chungmyeong was making a wise decision. He is bright and seems quick-witted, unlike normal Taoists. Rather, he seems more like a merchant or something, considering that he's a disciple of Mount Hua. Hong Dae-kwang felt that this disciple was more dangerous than he first thought. Those who faithfully abide by their sect's rules conform to the laws of the world, no matter how strong they are. However, those who remain unshackled by such tenets would shake up the world in their pursuits. Within 30 years, Mount Hua will be famous again. As Hong Dae-kwang was lost in thought, Chungmyeong frowned. Excuse me? Yes, what is it? We're both busy people. Let's get this over with quickly. How much will you pay? Hong Dae-kwang stared at the map and then glanced at Chungmyeong. His head seems to be working fast, but his experience with such things isn't good. The man had a troubled look on his face. If this really is the sword tomb of Yaksun, then it's priceless, right? But there are many things to consider. Yes? First, this map came from the Wudang sect. Since it belongs to the Wudang, the number of people willing to buy it would be cut in half once they learned about that. Another thing is that it's unclear whether or not this can actually be deciphered. Aside from that, we also need to hide the purchase history and find someone who can buy this in secret to avoid any rumors. Above all else, there's no evidence the information you claimed about this sword tomb is accurate. So? Chungmyeong stared at Hong Dae-kwang. He coughed slightly and continued. Considering all that, the fair value of this map would be about 100,000 yang. But I'll give you another 20,000 yang because of the friendship I share with Mount Hua's divine dragon. How about 120,000? 120,000? Yes. Is that so? It is a special price that I'm especially offering to you. When Chungmyeong smiled, Hong Dae-kwang smiled back. No matter how quick-witted or talented they may be, there was no way that swordsmen who isolated themselves in the mountains could be familiar with wealth. For a merchant, these sorts of people are pushovers. So the current situation was rolling in the branch leader's favor. Thud. Chungmyeong grabbed the map off the desk and shoved it back into his sleeve. Where was the nearest lower district branch? The Taoist. Chungmyeong smiled brightly. The price doesn't seem right, so let's end it here. The Taoist? What do you mean? The price is good. Why was he leaving? At that moment, Chungmyeong glared at Hong Dae-kwang with a gleam in his eyes and asked, 120,000. Right. If you don't like it, we can make it 150,000. 150,000? Hong Dae-kwang faltered as a hunch crept into his mind. I was wrong. He understood this thing's value. So, Hong Dae-kwang would need to fix this. You bastards are getting on my nerves. Chong-myung's eyes changed. Kwang! The table was flipped as Hong Dae-kwang was mesmerized by the tea that was scattered all around. How dare you prey on people, you beggar bastards? It really felt like everything was messed up.